All right, so I don't think there needs to be so much introduction here because you all know who I am. What I'm playing around with here is Anamorphic. Anamorphic is a very strange thing to play with, especially when you have to make a Frankenstein of an anamorphic setup, attaching it to a lens, whilst clamping the anamorphic lens, screwing it to the front of the lens, and then double focusing. I have to say this gives an interesting effect. As you can see here, it's got a very long, stretched out image here, but while still being in perspective. Now the fun thing is that if you'd have a look at this image not stretched out like this, it's going to be covering the full sensor, and you're getting the full resolution there of that sensor. And then a process called desqueeze desqueezes that image so you get a full spectrum, full coverage here of an image. Now here I'm just testing it out. I thought I would show you in this video what this anamorphic lens is really, what it's capable of. And you know, this is what you would call anamorphic on a budget. And this lens costs about 2,000 krona, and it comes with the clamp, and you can attach it to a variety of lenses. So what I've got on right now is an 85mm lens, and I'm approximately 2 meters away from me, and you're getting this very stretched out image from an 85mm. Now that's very interesting because, you know, you get a really crazy wide image from a very long lens. So you get that same perspective of this long lens, the 85mm, but then you get a wide aspect ratio. So this is what they call a 2 times cinescope anamorphic lens. So I'm doing the introduction with the anamorphic attached, so you get the first impression straight up of how this lens looks. And like I said, it's an absolute pain in the ass to focus. So I'm probably a little bit out of focus right now. If I check my reference monitor, no, it looks all right, maybe. But if I dip out of here and then here, yeah. Because it's a manual focus lens and you have to focus the taking lens. So that's the 85mm lens. It's called the taking lens because that's what you put which is essentially a projector lens on the front of this lens. And then you have to screw this projector lens on, or the anamorphic lens on the front of this taking lens, and therefore you get this anamorphic squeezed out cinematic look. Is it practical? Hell no. Is it cool? Yeah. Is it worth it? I mean, you are buying a piece of glass and it's a relatively good quality piece of glass, but you know, unless it's in very controlled circumstances, it can be very difficult to get the shot. Not saying that it's not difficult, it's not saying that it's not possible, but on the same token, it is something that is very special, and it's more of a, let's say, a specialist tool or a toy somewhat for people who really love anamorphic opposed to spherical. The anamorphic is this and spherical is around. Yeah, I don't know. My first impressions, I took this lens out for a mission yesterday to go do some scouting for a location for a music video. And I took the lens also to do some, you know, kind of perspective shots, a little bit of practice for myself because I only got this lens yesterday. And, you know, when you're really excited to play around with something and then you kind of get, not disappointed, but a little bit kind of, okay, how do I create a sharp image, you know, on the fly when I've got moving subjects? It's very difficult. So I'm kind of thinking, you know, I have to direct this music video a little bit differently and have things kind of square on rather than diagonal or lots of movement. But that's the direction process there that comes with technicalities of such equipment. Now, not to saying that it's impossible to do this music video that I'm producing now. but it's going to be a challenge, and you know, I'm probably going to come across a lot of unfocused images, but you know, for this type of imagery and you know, the artistic nature of it, it's something that out of focus slightly could be charming, you know, especially if you get the flare. And you know, the flare is what a lot of people really love about it. You know, I'm a bit so-so about it. I got some examples that I'm going to show just a little bit later on from the test shots that I got from yesterday. Now, that being said, I'm going to now take this lens off of the camera and show it to you on the table, because it's interesting to actually have a look at the equipment itself as well. So back in the anamorphic. Okay, so this is, I hate to admit it, the number 4 attempt to be able to film this. I actually had some technical difficulties. I was trying to record a lot of information on a hard drive that couldn't actually cater for the amount of information coming through. So that was my error, but at least I did it here in a controlled environment and not on a paid job. So we all make mistakes, but this is why we do our training. This is why we do all the things that we do when we're playing around with camera equipment and all of the other equipment associated. So what I'm recording to right now is a Sumo, and I've got my multi-camera set up in there, and I'm doing ISO recording as well as recording a program at the same time. So it's a lot of information going on an SSD. Good to understand this now before I go and do some shows with it, because like I said, it's a very new tool for me to play with as of recently, and you know, it's always good to kind of go, okay, well, what are the pitfalls, what are the ins and outs, what's this and this, and that's the value of testing equipment beforehand thoroughly and finding out what works and what doesn't work before you get out on the field and it destroying your life, or at least destroying your income, and also the trust from your clients. So the reason why clients trust me so much is because I play around a lot with my gear. Anyway, everything aside of the technical difficulties, because you know, we're all subject to this problems as an amateur, as a professional. We've got to try and figure things out. So moving right along, we saw the intro, the anamorphic thing. I'm trying to keep my enthusiasm up as much as possible, so I'm going to switch over to camera 2. So camera 2 is going to show us the little lenses and stuff like this that we got here. So I quickly just show you a little bit around this anamorphic lens. This is a Sankor 16C. I am trying to remember exactly what I said in the last 3 videos. So I started off with saying, would I recommend this lens? No. Why? Because it's you have to double focus, it's a pain in the ass, and it's not very quick to do any of these actions like you know, run and gun stuff. But if you had the time to be able to spend and invest on that, then sure, why not go ahead, be my guest. In terms of fast-paced environment, this is really not the lens for that type of thing. And if you also have a patience issue, then I would steer clear from this. But it does produce very pretty images, and I can recommend it for playing around with and experimenting when you are out there in your own time to collect videos and images that you want for personal projects. I mean, it's not to say that you can't do professional projects on it, you just need a lot of time to be able to set up and make that happen. The creative benefits of playing around with this are like, it's fun, you know, but it is a Frankenstein. You have to get some step-up rings for your taking lens, and I'll explain to you what that is in a minute, but you'll need to find the filter thread for the lens that you are going to attach to it. This is how you sort of saw the arrangement. You got the taking lens, which happens to be this 85mm Russian lens, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a minute, with the step-up ring to a clamp, and then to the anamorphic lens. So it's a real beast, and it just goes to show how awkward it really is to to kind of put together. So you need to focus this lens first and then focus your anamorphic lens to your subject. So it's a really time consuming process. So that's part of the reason why I don't recommend going for this. But if you want to get that awesome cinematic big scope, what you were reminiscent of all big films, be my guest, have fun with it. But I think for my professional work, I'm just going to go and hire some anamorphic glass, which is all in one, and that I don't need to fart around and try and focus it at the end of the day. So I'll just move along and talk about some of the vintage glass that I have. So I picked up this for about 1300 krona, so it's about 130 euro-ish. This is the Jupiter 9. It's a pretty legendary piece of glass for an 85mm. It's an M39 mount, which is an old Leica mount, but it is easily converted to any of your modern day cameras. And I really love this lens because you've got this beautiful stepless iris, and you've got 15 blades, so you get this beautiful like out of focus bokeh going on. So I'll provide some images later in the Patreon attachments, so you can actually have a look at some of the effects of this lens. Again, you know, you get a good quality piece of all metal design, Soviet magic. I think this one was made in the late 50s, so it's actually a pretty old lens now. But at old and gold, and it's made of quality. Yeah, I actually recommend having a play around with this lens if you're into focusing stuff and having time to muck around with composition and or portraits. Portraits. This is a great one to pick up, and you know, for the quality and the actual rendition of the picture you get is up there with all of the kind of modern day fantastic super expensive 85mm lenses. Yeah, you can't go wrong with this. That's it. That's my recommendation. I would definitely get one. Remember, M39 mount, so you need an M39 mount adapter to whatever camera you have. I just happen to have the EF one here. So, and then talking about one that's already on my Zenit camera, and this is a camera that I showed off in my last little video about black and white film, analog photography. This is the E. Ludwig Merita. This is a little nifty 50. This is a super tiny little lens, and it's a super fun little lens actually, because you also have, it can be very useful for video because you have that stepless iris going on there. However, it's not exactly the most, let's say, bright lens because it's at f2.9, almost f3. So, you know, arguably it's okay. But I wouldn't say it's a low light monster at all. But for the fact that it's so freaking tiny, to give you an idea, like my hands are quite small, but let's say for all right, what's a good reference? I guess a lens cap to a camera mount. This is like a Canon, or as you can see, a red one, but this is the Canon EF mount. So it's actually really small. You know, you got it's a nifty 50. It's all made of metal. It's made in Germany. The glass is decent, and I'll share some photos later on the Patreon page for you guys to actually have a look at. And when I get out there and go for a mission, might take this one for a little skate mission in the coming days when it's not raining so hard outside, and see what photos I can get with it. I'm going to adapt it to an EF mount and maybe take one of my red cameras, or might even just take a normal photographic camera and go from there. Yeah, and that one was pretty inexpensive, but I paid for it here 300-400 krona Norwegian. So yeah, awesome, and I can use this on my Zenit camera, so I've got a little nifty 50 there if I want to go for a little mountain trip and not want to have such a heavy arrangement. So that's that one out of the way. Then I really wanted to quickly talk about the significance of step-up rings. They come in a variety of stuff, and yeah, I think that's kind of good to consider, that that you can buy one filter, have all your step-up rings to, let's say, 77mm like I have here, and I can use one filter with all of my lenses across the board. Yeah, so that's it from me with this kind of little explanation of anamorphic and some vintage lenses here. I would definitely go out there and experiment pick up a couple of cheap, vintage lenses, try them on your cameras. You know what? You'll be pleasantly surprised. Yeah, so that's it from me for this one, and I'll talk to you, see you, hear you, make videos for you in the future. I'm going off to go get some food now because I'm really hungry, so I'll see you later. Ciao.